Okay.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Steven Minsky. Steven is the CEO and founder at Logic Manager, which is a powerful risk management software with comprehensive solution that supply organization with focused and improved risk management processes. Steven, you have been a prolific blogger and you wrote many posts for our website, Global Risk Community, and this is actually your third interview with us. And the previous ones were on the topics related to data privacy and how ERM can facilitate ESG strategies. Thank you for coming to our interview again, Steven.
It's a pleasure, Boris. Absolutely a pleasure.
Thank you, thank you. And today we will discuss a topic that kind of very special, is a combination of vendor and cyber risk. So because now, after 2 years, 2 long years of COVID, we finally able to meet in person. And I think you held last week, you held a conference. So could you please maybe start, tell us what are major topics that were discussed on this conference?
Sure. No, it's very exciting. Our customers came from all over the world. We had, of course, social distancing and all the proper safety measures. And so far, a week later, we've had no outbreaks, which is a very prideful thing. As risk managers, we want to be able to get together safely. It was exciting because I'd asked in my keynote how many of the attendees had been to any conference of any kind since, pretty much April of 2020. And it was clear this was the first and only conference that they've been able, a risk management conference they've been able to go to in person. Huge amount of energy of practitioners sharing practices. Some of the big themes there were about how things have changed since March 20th, we all know, with the global pandemic. And that set in motion a number of major trends for digitization as people moved out of the offices and to remote working conditions. It shifted the cyber infrastructure, the cyber profiles, and most organizations have been slowly adapting to this new normal where the workforce is not going back to the office, not anytime soon. There's the great resignation and swapping where organizations are suffering up to 40–50% turnover, which means that their security postures are greatly weakened because they don't have the institutional knowledge. If you have 5% of a company joining new, the training and controls can be rather loose because the vast majority of the company can at least socially pressure employees to be doing the right thing. What we've seen is that now, in combination with the remote work, where you have out of sight, out of mind, you have them outside the firewalls because the firewalls all got clogged up with so much of the traffic. Many organizations have now gone outside their VPNs. And now what you have with the great resignation is taking a fragile system and making it even more fragile. And we're seeing a demand for risk management to document the controls, document tests, document policies. This is something that was perhaps left to only SOCs or perhaps left only to a SOC 2 kind of exercise. And now we're seeing across the board, marketing and sales and all the other departments putting the traditional kind of risk management practices in that you wouldn't find in those areas. I think this is an exciting trend in a sense because, for example, with our customers, we, instead of calling them controls, because sales and marketing might not like those words so much, but a rose by any other name is still a rose. So we've seen that trend for them to be putting in how-to guides and procedures to help train their organizations and document which they would have done informally. And I think that's a mega trend that we're under right now. The other aspects that we saw at the conference is a massive change in the business environment. And we all know that there's high inflation, and as individuals, we can see that at the supermarket. But from a business perspective, massive amounts of change for business models. What you're seeing is, let's say a mortgage lender that was doing a huge volume of refinancings at very low rates, new mortgages, because the rates were very low. With rates shooting up, they're concerned where they're going to get their new revenues from, as they expect new housing starts and new mortgages to decrease significantly. They're looking now again at new product development and what new products they're going to have to fill in their revenue gaps. So in every company is in inflation, and therefore every company is experiencing some aspect of new risk management. And maybe 5 years ago that was called emerging risk, and now it's considered risk management because it's all present and it's all happening at the same time. So this is just a lot of empathy, of course, to the risk community, because we are human and we feel the pain and suffering that our employees and our customers feel with the volatility, on our personal lives, from all of the social issues that are rising up and interrupting our business activities, to the economic, to the war activities, whether they be cyber or physical. Europe is suddenly, finding itself in the threat of a physical or cyber war that has not been seen in 70 plus years, and the pandemic hasn't gone away. So really, there's this enormous distraction going on in the customer and the entire supply chain. So these are some of the great themes that we saw at the conference. And for us at Logic Manager, we see this is good news in a way, for we have a seat at the table as risk managers to help, because whenever there's change, massive change, and the organization is fearful, they turn to the risk management group for help to put in systems and processes to address those changes and help facilitate those changes in a safe way.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, let's dive into the topic of combination of vendor and cyber risk. For example, can you perhaps elaborate more on this topic? Because there are many security, privacy, and other issues involved. What tips do you have for risk managers to help their organizations to stay the course?
Yep. So this is something that Logic Manager was very much a leader of in 2013. When there was the credit card breaches, if people remember, way back when in 2013, 2015 timeframe, where you had credit card theft was everywhere. It was never through the front credit card systems. It was never through the front firewalls. It was never through the front door of any of the organizations. It always was through the back door. In fact, like Target was one of the largest ones that came in through an HVAC, air conditioning system vendor. They had very weak passwords, and they came in through the back door and had were able to do great damage. Fast forward now to 2022 and beyond, we are already seeing that we're in the very early phases of a cyber war. The headlines haven't shown it yet, but the surveillance on our companies, the servers are getting pinged, the weak points are getting probed, and we can see this in Europe and in the United States, North America, and all of Europe clearly. And the actors are not only from Russia, but also from China. And as that alliance seems to be forming, as the global world order seems to be shifting to some multi-region world order. And the takeaways for us is what we see at Logic Manager, the biggest weakness by far in risk management across is cyber as it relates to vendor management. So the case that I like to talk about this when at my keynote and with the customers that I meet with, Excellion, they're the world's largest software vendor to the legal community. And they were breached last year. And they're, just a law firm, but they're the law firm to thousands and thousands of major corporations and organizations. And the top 15 or so to top 20 law firms, all were using the same Excelon software. It wasn't a particularly fancy piece of software. It wasn't a piece of mission critical software, but they were able to use this software to enter all the world's top law firms and get at all the corporate secrets through the law firms. This is a whole new vector for organizations. The cyber criminals have gotten so much more savvy to say organizations have beefed up their direct walls and their direct protection, but they are extraordinarily weak on the vendor management side. So what I want to point out here, something like 94% of all corporations around the world are still at just sending out a questionnaire to the vendors, asking some questions. There's no evidence that the vendor is telling the truth. There's no evidence that the vendor is misguided, that they're not misguided. They're maybe telling the truth, but there's no evidence of anything in the questionnaires that would give comfort that they have done what they need to do. Let me give you an example of this. On one of the questionnaires, you might say, and I'm just using a hypothetical here, you do password, complex passwords. And let's say it's pretty common for people to have password vaults and so forth that generate complex passwords for their employees. This is pretty normal. But the problem is with the vendors' logins from your own company, there's a governance risk management gap in managing the password vault results. So in that password vault, you can click one or two buttons and come up with a report and show which employees are reusing passwords and are not following the guidelines and using weak passwords. However, 80% of the employees do follow that, 20% don't, and it's up to 40% don't. And so you're figured you have 1,000 employees, now you have 400 weaknesses throughout your organization. Now, as that aligns to us as risk managers in organizations, you can't follow up with 400 individual users and force them to make a change. You have to work with a workflow and tasks to reach the managers, for them to do access rights reviews, to understand shouldn't they be having this access? Do they have privileged access, meaning big, powerful access versus, level over, task or reporting access, and to be able to risk rank which users have what kind of strength of access. Now, this is still more advanced at corporations than it is at vendors. Very, very few vendors, although they have the systems for passwords, virtually none of them actually put the governance layer to say, are there duplicate passwords? Are the passwords weak? And almost none of them at this time risk rank their users to be able to say, who are my administrators? Who are the ones that do development releases? Who are the ones that do these kinds of important security activities around the company? And we all know SolarWinds, and we've heard of this company now, Excelon. Same kind of thing with SolarWinds. They actually compromised a powerful administrative password at SolarWinds, and the same thing at Excelon. It was an administrative password which gave them keys to the kingdom for the hackers. They actually, therefore, then embedded the malware directly into the software release, and that went behind all the radars of all their companies and ended up infecting and espionage and malware to most of their customer base. So really what we have to do in risk management now is look at, provide evidence, not just a questionnaire, provide me evidence that you're providing governance, that your users are following the policy. Provide me evidence that you have risk ranked and identified that top tier and second tier of vendors and partners, and have you done the risk ranking of the users from each of them, both inside their organizations and our own, to make sure that they're not adding things that can, because once it's added in through the back door of the vendor, there's virtually no way to know about it from the company, and no survey is going to pick that up. But as there is similarly with the fraud paradigm, you cannot control rationalization of why people do what they do. You cannot control the motivation or whether they have a sick parent or something. that, or some distraction in their personal lives that has them violated policy, but you can control their opportunity to harm the company. And that's where we need to be requiring of our vendors. These are the standards of our corporation around your vendor employees. Who are your risk rated ones, and provide evidence that they're in fact meeting the risk management guidelines for the type of vendor they are. So say a Staples doesn't need this because they aren't very much a threat, but if it's your core banking system, it's your core hospital system, it's your core energy system, this is where the rubber hits the road. Now, there's been so many very recent Russian exploitations of this, and I believe this is just the beginning of sort of testing and casing and surveillance. And we're going to see over the next 2 years to 3 years, some very serious malware where actually the ransomware, they don't want the money back. This could be even state actors just wanting to erase the data. Imagine how difficult it would be if bank data was erased and our deposits were erased. What would that do to the United States infrastructure? And this is really what's happening in real time today. And I would say that the vast majority of organizations are not prepared. I have a solution for that, Boris, I'd love to tell you about, but I'd like to just stop there and ask any questions that you have on what I've talked about so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my question is maybe more in actual one. So how does someone listen to this maybe prepare? Is there some plan of action or some kind of training, or what you would suggest for people who want to take action on this?
So number one, absolutely by far, the number one step here is to recognize that the changes that I'm talking about cannot be done at the bottom of the vendor management group that do questionnaires. It is not reasonable to go to that group and say, hey, we need to address these risks. It needs to go all the way up to the risk committee level. It has to go to the two heads, the head of cyber, whether that's your CISO, and the head of your vendor, which could be procurement, it could be legal, it could be chief operating officer. At that level, you have to find out who does vendor report to or third party report to, and who does cyber report to. And I want to make this clear. It's even more important to look at partners. So if you have core partners, who you would call core partners that you are in your supply chain, sometimes you call them a vendor, sometimes you call them a partner. Again, you have to go up through that strategic partner network, and who is the department head in the line of business that has these key partners. And I'll just give you just a high level example what I mean here. A telecommunications company doesn't own their own towers. They don't own their entire infrastructure. They have a very close and deep partnership with several other entities to provide that service. They've got to get inside of those partner entities and have the standards of security and procedures met the same as they would for their own security. Otherwise, they're going to be legally liable because they said, the standard of threshold is, are you treating, are your partners or vendors treating the data with the same or equal caution that you're treating your own data? And if they are not, the company who's using that partner, the company that's using that vendor will be liable. So again, point number one, get up to the C level and get a direct program put in place that is contributed to and measured by and reported back to a focused program manager that goes over two of these. Some people, by the way, have done this for SOX, not some. All organizations that do SOX have a SOX program manager. All those that do ESG have an ESG program manager. There's very many examples of companies being successful with this precedent of cross-functional programs. And this is the first step, is to establish that cross-functional program. The second step is then to set a series of evidence providing requirements. So it means the questionnaires are not sufficient. The people filling out the questionnaires may or may not even know the answers to those questions, and they might just be compelled to answer yes, truthfully thinking that they do those things. But since they don't do those things, they might be giving false positives, which means those questionnaires cannot be relied upon. What we have to do is go through the questionnaires and look at what are the types of evidence that you can show me that proves that your partner or vendor is actually not only doing vulnerability scans, but they're actually risk rating the results and making that within certain thresholds, they're actually closing the loopholes on the vulnerabilities. For patch management, the same, 80% always go through, no problem there. Can you show me risk rating of each of, can you demonstrate and show evidence that you have risk rated your patches? And can you show me how many of them didn't go through and how many hours until they were completed? If the partner or vendor says 100% went through, you know they're not telling the truth, because no patch, never has all patches gone through or all users following the policy. It usually comes down to about 20% of patches not going through, vulnerabilities not getting addressed, users not following the policy. And so really you've got to find the evidence of, without passing the information, because they don't have to pass the usernames and things of that nature, but they do need to provide the evidence, how many were caught, how many were closed, and what the risk ratings were on those. This is something that's a new, this is going to be the new normal, but like I said, there's so many examples of this, and the threats are being tested right now, and they're finding, my prediction, unfortunately, is 9 months from now, we will see a whole rash of these penetrations, just like we did in 2013, when, if everybody remembers, their credit cards were all taken away from them. Almost every week, you got a new credit card in the mail. It was very disruptive. That was for the consumer side, and business is usually lagging the consumer side. And I would expect you're going to see in the next year, wave upon wave of vulnerabilities. And let me repeat the good news here, because this is important. This is troubling times. We as risk managers can prevent 100%, if not 100%, 94% is what our surveys show of the liability. The goal here is not to prevent the attack. The goal here is to make sure that we're not liable, and having not done our responsibilities contractually to mitigate what we knew about and what was possible to mitigate. And that's where the vast pain here is companies might be down in the 15%, where they need to really be getting up into the 90% of liability elimination. And I have done this with our customers, and we can demonstrate, in fact, you can entirely eliminate penalties and liabilities in your vendor and partner community through these activities. Because again, you're not saying that bad things don't happen, it's just we were ready for them and we were not negligent. And that is the standard in our reputation for the see-through economy that our customers are holding us to say, hey, I will not accept you being negligent with my life and my assets. And at the end of the day, this goes back to every lawsuit that has ever been won. It's around, was the party found negligent? Not whether a bad thing happened, but were they found negligent? And and I would say most of our organizations in Europe and the United States in this area of a program stretching over vendor and cyber are in fact negligent, if not grossly negligent. And there will be some very high-powered awards, because this is how behaviors are changed. The regulators will come out and find, and they call this, back to the Middle Ages, head on a spike. And they're going to be looking for small, medium, and large organizations to penalize severely in order to send the message to all the others. And the last of this is this head on a spike has begun in terms of CISA, for example, in the United States, and the same in Europe, requiring corporations to report intrusions and for the first time demonstrate their response management. And if their response management is lacking, they're liable. So even first baby step of saying, can I even respond to this in the allotted amount of time? This is even a level that most organizations are really not yet prepared to do, because it's not just simple, let them know. You have to go through your legal, you have to go through your IT, you have to go through your vendor community. And today's processes in most organizations are not set up yet to be able to go through that process in the amount of time that is allowed, which throws some companies back into the negligent bucket again, which is unnecessary.
Okay, so let's discuss a little bit about your risk maturity model, because you created it some time ago, and we also posted on our site at tools section. So if everyone is on our site, globalriskcommunity.com, on the tools section, you can check, and also on your site, logicmanager.com. So if you can share with us a little bit in a few words how people can work with it.
Yep. So this is the risk maturity model. I authored this model back in 2006. It is the most heavily used benchmarking tool for risk management across all geographies and all industries. We have thousands of organizations that use this tool to benchmark. I'll add that it's free to global risk community members. This is a partnership that we put together with Boris very proactively years and years ago, and we're standing behind that. So what do you get from this risk maturity model? What it does is it outlines, like we talked about for the cyber vendor risk, it pushes, if you will, the maturity out to where are your gaps and your weaknesses with your partners, with your vendors, with your cyber, with your compliance, business continuity and whatnot. It pushes this framework out to the risk manager partners in our lines of business to really understand how prepared are they for any of these initiatives. And it will show you which business areas and which business groups within groups and geographies are mature, meaning they're prepared for these kinds of programs, versus non-prepared. Non-prepared means you're liable, you're negligent, because there's a minimum threshold. So use this tool, it's free. It has also been shown, some people do things out of fear, and another reason to do it is out of success. It has been proven in partnerships with major European and United States research organizations that being a mature organization in terms of your readiness to have a robust enterprise risk management program, that's worth 25% of your entire market value. So that means apples to apples, you're taking two public companies in the same industry, one with a robust risk management program, and comparing its financial and operational results with one that does not have a robust risk management program in place that can provide evidence of the activities that they do, and evidence all the way out to the front line, evidence across their silos, and evidence out to their supply chains. This is statistically proven to be your organization that has a robust risk management program in place is worth 25% more than your peer in with all other things taken into consideration. A very, very powerful benchmarking tool. And I'll just say that to the risk managers who are listening, we all have professional education requirements for our jobs. This one is very special because it's not only showing the risk managers, this is what I have to show. This is how do I measure how many ships I've saved with erecting a lighthouse? That's what this program is all about. And what you'll be able to do is then some of our organizations take this and present it to their risk committees and present it to their boards, showing you benchmarking year on year. This is the improvements they've made. This is what they are now. Here's the budget I need. And here's the improvement that I've made, so that they can actually then take those investments, make changes to the risk management program, and on either annually or twice a year, come back and report to the risk committees how that readiness and preparedness and effectiveness for managing risk across the organization has improved. So there's a hard dollar and a soft dollar return. And I said the risk maturity model is without charge at riskmaturityModel.org. And as Boris had said, if you go at it through the Global Risk Community's website, you'll see that there won't be any charge, and you'll get reports that you can share with your auditor to validate those results, for the line managers to understand how to do this, for your risk management team, and for your other governance areas to be able to assess the risk readiness in, for example, vendor or compliance or cyber and things of that nature.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Steven. So to remind you, if you want to check this tool, it's on our site at the Tools tab, and also on our Logic Manager site. So if I want to round up this interview, so if I forgot something, maybe you would like to add anything?
No, just that, like I said, the first two steps here have no charge. So this is a community, if you will, announcement. Get up to your risk committee, talk about the cyber vendor gap, and take action on that. Take the risk maturity model, do that, and then bring that to that group and show them where the organization is and where they need to accept the risk and say, are we ready to announce to the world, because under the new disclosures, it is a required activity now to respond and disclose these weaknesses, just like financial weaknesses for SOX. You now have to declare risk management weaknesses, and the SEC is coming down very, very hard on this. So again, these are two free steps, and please reach out to your risk committees, reach out to your boards, reach out to your leadership. They know they need to do this, and if they don't know they need to do this, Boris and I would be glad to give them the documentation, get that conversation going. Of course, like I said, if you want some help, there's documentation that on the Risk Global Community website with the risk maturity model, and put in an inquiry if you're not finding something. And again, glad to provide you these documents with no charge, no commitments, just to help bring our community. We're in this all together, and our critical infrastructure in Europe and the United States is exposed. And you know, let's work together to close these you know, easy low-hanging fruit, or let's say straightforward low-hanging fruit areas that are gaps between our silos and gaps between us and our partners. We've got to make a mandate to do that, because we still have time before these bad things happen. So thank you, Boris, for
Thank you, Steven. I wish you great
education.
success in the future in developing some more tools that help our members, and I hope in a few months we can schedule another interview with you on another topic and discuss it in the kind of wider terms and more specific terms. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye now.